Good morning, everyone. Please be seated. Thank you all for joining us here this morning, and welcome to the 53rd Annual Deborah Morton Convocation Ceremony. I am Mark Dwyron, Chair of the University of New England's Board of Trustees. On behalf of all the trustees, I would like to thank you all for coming today and joining us in this wonderful tradition. We're here to honor 4 outstanding Maine women. Here to receive today's awards: Brenda Garand, Kathleen Mazzucchelli, Barbara McDade, and Rachel Talbot Ross. Please. The Deborah Morton Convocation and Award Ceremony is an honored tradition of Westbrook College. As you will later hear, this 19th century woman, Deborah Morton, was quite progressive in her time. We hope that our students will take what they learn here and improve their surrounding communities the way that Deborah Morton, society members, and our award recipients here today have done. I know you will join me in celebrating their remarkable accomplishments. It is now my pleasure to introduce the chair of the Deborah Morton Society Steering Committee, 2009 Deborah Morton Society awardee. Lori LaChance. Like all of the members of the society, Lori has been an important part of the economic, educational, and community service in Maine for all of her professional life. Currently serving as president of Thomas College, Lori has in the past served as Central Maine Power's corporate economist, Maine State economist, and president and CEO of the Maine Development Foundation. She gives generously of herself, her time, efforts, and support to benefit the Deborah Morton Society and an endowment scholarship fund at UNE. Please join me in welcoming Lori.
Well, thank you, Mark. It is truly an honor to welcome all Deborah Morton Society members, inductees, families, and friends who are here to celebrate today. And I'd like to thank our hosts, the students, faculty, administration, and the board of the University of Maine, the University of New England. Sorry about that. This is one of my favorite events of the year because it's so uplifting and affirming. It's also a great honor to reconnect with society members, many of whom I've looked up to for many years. And it's a great joy to begin to know and hear the stories of 4 amazing inductees. Each leadership path is unique, it's inspirational, and it's certainly worth celebrating. I've long been a student of leadership, fascinated by the factors and attributes that lead to success. About a year or so ago, I read a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers. In it, he identifies 4 factors that determine success. The first probably won't surprise you: hard work. Success doesn't come easily. It's not just granted to people as much as we might hope that were the case. He, through his research, grew to understand it takes at least 10,000 hours of working hard at your craft to actually succeed in that area. Whether you're an athlete, a musician, an entrepreneur, a business leader, Deborah Morton Society members, 10,000 hours are put in of just hard work. A second factor is your ancestry or your heritage. He suggests you are where you are from. And I know from my own experience of growing up in Dover-Foxcroft, Maine, it shapes almost everything I do, every decision I make, every choice I make. Your culture, your traditions influence you as a leader and shape you into the unique leadership style that you have. A third factor, when you were born. the era that you came of age, sometimes even the month that you were born within a year, will have an influence on your success. Many, many folks have been touched by just that. A while ago, I had a chance to reflect on my own life, and I was standing at the podium looking at my oldest sister, who is 11 years older than me, just 11 years older. And I realized, had I been born in her place, I would not have had many of the opportunities that I had. For example, I wouldn't have been able to go to Bowdoin College because they weren't yet taking women. I wouldn't have gone into the training program at Central Maine Power Company because it didn't exist. And I likely wouldn't have been able to hold the position of the first female economist or the first head of the Development Foundation or of Thomas, because those opportunities would not have been made available to me. So I've grown to understand how important it is and what an influence it has on our paths, just factors like this. The fourth factor that he talks about, I think, is probably the most important. What opportunities were given to you? Did you have a mentor? Were you at the right place at the right time? And most importantly, did you have the courage to take the risk and to seize the opportunity that was offered to you? The Deborah Morton Award was first presented in 1961. It's the first annual award in Maine that honors and celebrates the success of female leaders. The award honors Deborah Morton, who was valedictorian of the Westbrook Seminary class of 1879. Deborah is described as a teacher, a dean, a linguist, a historian, civic leader, and pioneer. She studied in France and Germany. She traveled the globe. She made 14 trips to Europe and the Near East. By all accounts, she was a modern woman. But this was 100 years ago. What barriers did she face? What prejudices did she overcome? What are the many things that she did to pave the way for the rest of us, to give us opportunities that she may have only dreamed of? Today we celebrate Deborah Morton. We celebrate all prior winners who have inspired, encouraged, and mentored us. And we celebrate 4 amazing women and will be forever touched by their stories. Congratulations to our inductees and welcome to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Dryron and President LaChance. And I can understand why Lori would make that mistake, because I always talk about UNE. We're a private university with a public mission. So we're happy to be called we are the University of Maine in one sense. So we'll take that. Yeah, it's good. I want to welcome you all to this wonderful event, the 53rd Annual Deborah Morton Society Awarding Ceremonies. For over 5 decades, we've been recognizing outstanding women from the state of Maine. It's always an exciting day on this campus, and as I walk across that green and come here, it's been, for almost 200 years, women have been walking across this campus, and it's been an educational site. And there is a sacredness to that I enjoy that process, and for me, this is really the beginning of the academic year. Our committee of Deborah Morton Awards is a group of women that help us honor and create this opportunity to celebrate not just the beginning of the academic year, but the beginning of this year for Deborah Morton Society. Lori LaChance, who chairs that committee for the last 2 years, you have met, but I'd like to recognize the other members of our committee: Meg Baxter, Susan Carlisle, Pat Collins, Kay Flanagan, Ruth Foster, Bridget Healy, Meredith Jones, Sister Mary Norberta, Catherine Pope, and Joni Benoit Samuelson. Thank all of you for your work. That's a very impressive list of women, but we have, and it just grows. So I would like to take a moment and invite all of our past Deborah Morton Society awardees, all members of the society, to please rise and be recognized as a group. That's a pretty powerful group. Thank you all for coming today to celebrate this day with us. I would like to take a moment to honor a previous chair of our Deborah Morton Society, Dorothy Dee Schwartz, who passed away in this last year. And I'd like to invite everybody to just have a moment of silence for Dee Dee. Thank you. She will be missed. Maine has a long history of women who have provided outstanding, thoughtful, courageous, compassionate leadership. Since 1961, the Deborah Morton Society has been recognizing these women. I hope all of you, all of our students here today, both young women and young men, will be inspired by our Deborah Morton Society members. Theirs are lives of service to others, and I think something that we can all learn from. Their accomplishments in their professional and community-oriented lives in Maine are really immeasurable, and I look forward to hearing from them today, and I hope and I know they will inspire all of us. Thank you all for coming today to join us, and now I'd like to begin our ceremony and invite Trustee Diane Collins-Field to step forward to present her Deborah Morton Award candidate.
Good morning. On behalf of the Board of Trustees for the University of New England, it is my pleasure to present the 2014 Deborah Morton Award recipient, Barbara Garand.
You have to wait. Yes. Brenda Garand is the CEO of Garand, an integrated marketing agency representing both regional and national clients. She has been an active member of Maine's philanthropic and business community for over 30 years. She serves on the boards of the World Affairs Council of Maine, the Cumberland Club, Maine Public Broadcasting Council of Maine, Maine and Company, and is also the past president of the International Women's Forum of Maine, and previously has served on the boards of the United Way of Greater Portland and Lewiston Auburn, the Portland Symphony Orchestra, the Camp Susan Foundation, Susan Collins Foundation, yeah, there was a typo, thank you, and the Girl Scouts of Maine. She was a longtime member of the Board of Visitors of the Muskie School of Public Service, has served as a trustee and treasurer of Northern New England Passenger Railway Authority, and she is also a member of the Maine Community College Foundation Leadership Council. In 2011, she was the recipient of 3 impressive awards: Maine Today's Media Great Women of Maine Award, the Junior Achievement for Maine's Business Hall of Fame, and Maine's Women Fund Tribute to Women of Industry Award. She has also received the Women of Distinction Award from the Girl Scouts, and she has been a very busy person, but has prepared herself for this impressive career with a master's in advertising from Syracuse University and a bachelor's in art history from Bates College. And I'd like to introduce now Brenda Garand to speak to you and present her with this Deborah Morton Award.
Good morning. What a pleasure and honor to be in such august company. As I look around the room, I see so many individuals of rare accomplishment, women and men, who represent our best and brightest. our most caring, and in some cases, our most daring. To find those better angels of our nature, as Lincoln said, many of us have studied hard, worked hard, and found a lucky break. Or perhaps we were born under fortunate stars, silver spoons in our perfect mouths, destined for accomplishment, acclaim, and acceptance. Or not. More likely, each of us, in our own way, has encountered a bumpy path, one fraught with risky conditions and scary circumstances, conditions that might encourage us to take the easy way home. But most of us didn't, and Maine and beyond is a better place because of that. What is it that emboldened so many of us to walk the road less traveled, the more difficult path, to pursue the unknown or the untried, to go first and not be afraid to come in last? For some, the chance to blaze a trail has been one of necessity. Once we were all immigrants, doing what we could to make a living and ultimately get ahead. Grandparents that began as service workers or laborers, picking rags, peddling, or working on a factory line, who encouraged their children to attend college or start a business. Many, if not most individuals of accomplishment, can be characterized as achievers. Whether academic, professional, or creative, we work hard applying ourselves to the best of our abilities and talents and work tirelessly to achieve our goals. But to my way of thinking, there's more to accomplishment and achievement than just this. There's also a critical capacity in real achievers, the ability and desire to take risks. I am, by choice, an entrepreneur, like my mother and my grandfather before me. But unlike them, I gave up a corporate title, a steady paycheck, benefits, and a predictable future to start a business. I am fortunate to have been well-educated and professionally experienced. They did what they did because it was their only choice. For me, while difficult at the time, since what fool starts a business with a baby, a mortgage, 2 car payments, and a husband in law school? But starting a business was not my only option, but it was worth doing. But it was not without risk. Big, scary, hairy risk. Risk that even after 25 years still has me wondering sometimes at midnight, the day before payroll is due, what was I thinking? But even considering all that, I know and imagine nearly everyone in this audience who has chosen the unexpected, the unpredicted, and the unsure over the stable, the settled, and the sure, that it is worth it in spades. For in this world, there is nothing more certain than change. And here in Maine, particularly for women, there is no greater risk than relying on others to take care of us, or believing the future will take care of itself. Economic development forecasters say the most jobs in the future, particularly in our state, will come from entrepreneurial ventures, small and micro business entities that are started and grow through the courage and vision of their founders. We can look at this future employment picture as a failure of our state's economy to provide plentiful living wage jobs for every person throughout the state, or we can view it as an opportunity for our citizens to attain their own sovereign potential. And what will it take? A lot of what every Deborah Morton scholar possesses: intelligence, talent, self-awareness, and hard work to start, with generous measures of luck and the ability to take and manage risks thrown in for seasoning. Learning to take risks is never easy, and with our planned play dates and handheld walks to the school bus, we don't do a good enough job anymore of encouraging it or embracing the pure joy of taking risks, but it can be learned and taught, and teach it we must. If each of us committed to mentoring one young person every year, helping to expand their boundaries, increase their aspirations, and build their confidence to learn through but not be defeated by failure, we could change the world or help brighten the light of a few of its next brightest stars. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. It's a wonderful message, and as I sat here listening and thinking about it, Lori's story about taking risks and being first, and Sandra Featherman, who took the risk, that's the first woman president of the university, and Jean Wilkinson, who was our first woman chair of the board, and I agree with you. I think that one of the really sort of values of the Deborah Morton Society is that these are women who took risks, who stretched themselves and have made the world better for that. On behalf now of the Board of Trustees of the University of New England, it's my pleasure to present Dan McCormick, who will present our next Deborah Morton Award recipient, Kathleen Mazzucchelli.
Good morning. On behalf of the Board of Trustees of the University of New England, it is my pleasure to present the 2014 Deborah Morton Award recipient, Kathleen Mazzucchelli.
If you'll just wait a second, I'm going to I learned that Kathleen was also Dan McCormick's first boss. And that he worked for her for all the way through high school, and he said he learned a lot of his work ethic from Kathy. So we're happy that he was able, as one of our trustees, to escort her today. Kathleen Mazzucchelli was appointed as the City of Caribou's first superintendent of Parks and Recreation in 1980. In her nearly 40 years with the Caribou Parks and Recreation Department, Mazzucchelli developed dynamic and creative programs, including the Caribou Rec Extreme and Wild Outdoor Women program. She was instrumental in the creation of Caribou Wellness and the Recreation Center, and she trained Dan in how to run. He ran the Cow Chip Bingo program every year. That was part of his job. I always learn a lot from this. She currently serves as chair of the Maine Healthy Partnership Executive Committee and the Maine State Trails Advisory Committee, and as project director for the city's Snowmobile Advisory Committee and ATV Advisory Committee. She is co-chair of Caribou's Alcohol and Drug Education Team, director of Aroostook County Tourism Board, and in 2013, Mazzucchelli was the first woman to be introduced from the Caribou branch of the Maine Sports Legend Hall of Fame. So it's a wonderful induction. The other awards include the Paul Harris Fellow Award from the International Rotary Club, Woman of the Year Award from the State of Maine American Association of University Women, and the Bridge Builder Award from the Aroostook County Substance Abuse Prevention Program. She was also the Woman of the Year for Caribou Business and Professional Association, and she earned her bachelor's in health, phys ed, and recreation from Plymouth State College in Plymouth, New Hampshire. It's my honor to present this award to Kathleen Mazzucchelli. Congratulations. I'm going to take this.
President Rippich, members of the Board of Trustees, faculty, staff, and guests, good morning. I'm humbled and I'm honored to be here today in the company of such an eclectic grouping of women that have had such a positive impact on the state of Maine. And I wish to extend a sincere thank you to the Deborah Morton Society Nominating Committee, and specifically to former inductees Patricia Collins and Chris Duty for considering my nomination. I also wish to congratulate my fellow inductees on their career successes. We inductees have been asked, as you see, to provide some brief remarks today. And since part of our job is now to mentor young women as they enter their respective careers, I thought I would refrain from sharing with you highlights of my career and instead share what I feel the tools that young people need to be successful. If our role is to be mentors, and we're going to teach you, young people, how to become a viable part of the workforce and to play an integral role in shaping the future of your world, we need to give you the tools and the role modeling so you can be successful. As you approach retirement, reflect on your life quite a bit. So when I realized I would be speaking here today, I tried to focus my thoughts on what actually has been important to me throughout my career. So I ask that you bear with me for these 4.5 minutes. First and foremost, I believe you have to have a passion for what you do. To me, it was never about monetary remuneration, a word I can never say. It was about waking up every day and wanting to go to work. Confucius once said, if you have a job you love, you will never work a day in your life. I was extremely fortunate. I never, ever woke up and didn't want to go to work. Were there challenging times? Absolutely. But when you have a passion for what you do, you meet those challenges head on and you move forward. And speaking of challenging times, many times in our careers we're faced with difficult decisions. During my career, one mantra I lived by and shared with my staff was that in matters of principle, lead with your conscience, not the crowd. That's difficult in today's world. Social pressures sometimes cloud our judgment, but we need to understand that it isn't about who agrees or disagrees with us. It's about knowing in the end that we made the right decision. And sometimes we question our decisions, but understand, as young people, life is a dynamic. It's a continuum where we evaluate everything that we do, which brings me to the value of experience. And I'm happy to know that Lori and I share common reading, because we all heard about Malcolm Gladwell earlier, and he defines that 10,000-hour rule. And he does note that by practicing a skill for 10,000 hours, you become relatively proficient. Thomas Edison, story or not, remarked that each time he tried to invent the light bulb, all 10,000 times, he didn't look at it as a failure. He simply looked at it as a way that didn't work. Experience is defined as our ability to recognize our mistakes. And after 40 years, suffice it to say, I have a lot of experience. But I tell you, don't be afraid to be bold. Don't be afraid to think outside the box, and let experience and knowledge be your guide. Many times we are faced with situations where we need to collaborate. Don't we love that word? To reach a goal. And oftentimes it's difficult to build those relationships needed due to differences in philosophies or principles. I revert to Doris Kearns Goodwin's publication, Team of Rivals, The Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln. Wonderful book. It's centered on Lincoln's mastery of molding together diametrically opposed personalities and how it shaped one of the most significant presidencies in our history. In the book, there's an excerpt from Joseph Medill, then editor of the Chicago Tribune. He asked Lincoln why he made the appointments of his rivals, Seward, Chase, Bates, and Cameron, to his cabinet, to which Lincoln replied, "We needed the strongest men of the party in the cabinet." Okay, I'm going back in those days, ladies. It was, we needed the strongest men of the party in the cabinet. They were strongest, and I had no right to deprive the country of their services. As community and corporate leaders, we need to realize that it isn't totally about our individual goal or goals. It's about combining our strengths and our weaknesses to achieve a common goal. Lastly, and probably most important tool to me, is having character and integrity. In a publication entitled Translating Beliefs into Behavior, simply stated, character is who you are when no one else is watching. In the publication, they provide us a wonderful explanation of defining personal character. Basically, they describe our character as being shown by the jokes we choose to share and not to share, the derogatory terms we choose to use and refuse to use, the promises we choose to break and the ones we keep, the rumors we choose to spread and those we ignore, the resources we choose to waste and those we use wisely, the lies we choose to tell and not to tell, the responsibility we choose to accept and those that we shirk, the courtesies we choose to extend and fail to extend, the efforts we choose to put forth and not put forth, the quality we choose to provide and the corners we cut, the information we choose to share and that which we hoard, the listening we choose to do and not to do, the respect we choose to give and that we fail to give, and the helpful hands we choose to extend and those we keep in our pockets. In closing, there is a diverse grouping of educational backgrounds in our audience today, but I urge you to keep in mind that training and education will not always determine your success. As Malcolm Gladwell showed, your success is a combination of culture, family, generation, and experience, and if you're a Canadian hockey player, the date you were born. But more important, I believe your success is going to be contingent on your passion, your principles, and more important, your character. One of my favorite quotes is, "We all have an end to journey towards, but it is the journey that matters in the end." I have had a wonderful journey. I wish the same for each and everyone here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. And now I think you can begin to understand why I look to this event each year to help recenter me on my leadership and inspire me with those words. We all appreciate it very much. Now I'd like to call on Karen Gregory to present her Deborah Morton Award candidate. Karen?
Good morning. On behalf of the Board of Trustees of the University of New England, it is my pleasure to present the 2014 Deborah Morton Award recipient, Barbara Rice McDade.
Barbara Rice McDade has been the director of the Bangor Public Library since 1991. During her tenure, she has automated library services, expanded service to include public computing, wireless access, online resources, and overseen 2 major capital campaigns, a $9.5 million addition to the library in 1997, and a second successful campaign of $9 million for building renovations that's currently in progress. McDade is the past legislative committee chair and past president of the Maine Library Association. And for book lovers all across Maine, we are very grateful for that. She was named Librarian of the Year of the association in 2002. She is also a commissioner of the Maine State Library and co-founder and co-chair of the Bangor Book Festival. Additionally, McDade is affiliated with the Maine Justice Action League, collaboration on innovation, technology, and equal access to justice. She is the past president of the League of Women Voters of Maine. She is also vice president of the Bangor Rotary Club and a member of the Bangor Arts Collective. She is the organist, woman of many talents, of the First Church of Christ in Bangor. McDade has received an MLS from the Graduate School of Library and Information Sciences at the University of Pittsburgh and a bachelor's degree in political science from Juanita College. She lives with her husband, Michael, in Bangor, and I'm very honored to present this Deborah Morton Award to her today.
Thank you, President Rippich. Thank you, members of the Board of Trustees, President Lori LaChance, members of the Society, and especially those from Bangor who have not only been my friends during my time living in Bangor, they have been people that I have looked up to, and they have indeed been my mentors and my friends. So I'm deeply humbled to be here today. I'm very happy to hear everyone talk about books. I was very fortunate that I grew up in a house with many books, but when I was little, I went to the library with my dad. We went once a week on Thursdays, I still remember. The library was just across the street, but that street happened to be a major highway, so I had to wait for Dad to come home from work before I could go. But times changed. Route 22 soon bypassed our little town. The library got a new building with better parking and was no longer across the street, and I could go to the library by myself. But things have just kept changing and changing. With technology and the internet, things have changed faster than anyone could ever agree, and it has happened in all our lives. Now there are people who say, why should we support libraries? And libraries are closing. School libraries are closing, academic libraries are closing, and public libraries are closing. It's a scary thing. After all, can't we get everything on the internet? Can't we get all our books from Amazon? Some ask, why should we pay good taxpayers' dollars just to support the homeless? Or all those elite people that go to the library, can't they buy their own books? There is still a need for libraries. The basic purposes of a public library are to provide its users books and other resources for continuing education, self-improvement, and recreation, to provide a place for the dissemination of ideas, and to collect and preserve the area's history and culture for future generations, and especially to provide the children in the service area the resources that will encourage them to read and to aid in helping them learn research skills which will be valuable to them in their later life. Working backwards from those purposes, I don't think there is anyone in the room who would argue against the importance of the third mission of early childhood literacy. In fact, our current politicians and business leaders have called for stronger initiatives to ensure that our children are engaged in early literacy programs. It's basic to growing a strong economy. Parents who take pleasure in books convey that pleasure to children. We need all adults to mentor that, to show that reading is something that is pleasurable. Children who associate pleasure with books enter our schools eager to read. Children who read or are read to in their preschool years are more successful in school. What could be more encouraging than to be cuddled while hearing a story? Public libraries have been part of that early literacy movement since the beginning of the 20th century. I bet many of you remember going to the library when you were a child. And I bet that you take your children or your grandchildren to the library now. Part of the new early literacy program calls for children to have read or to have been read to 1,000 books before they enter kindergarten. I think if public libraries had not been invented, trying to reach that goal would certainly cause them to be invented now. And you need that librarian there, someone with experience that can help you find what it is that you're looking for, even if it's only a little child saying, "Mama, you know, I want that story about the wolf that that chased that little girl, you know, honkercha, honkercha, honkercha. If you don't know that story, it's a great story. Ask your children's librarian. Libraries are changing to meet the needs of today's families. More and more children go to daycare and preschools, so there's less and less time to find when that time to go to the library is. Schools have after-school programs. Families are busier than ever. And yes, there are smartphones and tablets and computers that take up more and more of our time. Libraries have had to change to meet those needs. They have different times for programs, they have different kinds of programs, and they know that just having books on the shelf won't drive people to come. Libraries need to be interactive, have crafts on hand, encourage making space, because libraries, after all, are connecting children and adults to ideas. And that's what it is, making a conversation between the generations. I'm not now, nor have I ever been a children's librarian, unfortunately, but it's a subject I could talk about for a long, long time. Unfortunately, I want to say a few more things before my time is up. Public libraries provide a place to find out about your community. It's that trusted place to go for information, a comfortable third space, that place not work nor home, to meet with others and to connect with ideas. Although much of the government information we need is now online, libraries help make it more accessible, either by placing it in a digital commons to keep it accessible, because many times something goes up on a web page, but 6 months later it's gone, and how do you find it? Or they have classes to help individuals use the technology to find this accessible information. There is a digital divide in this country, and the library is uniquely positioned to help close that gap. To apply for a job now, I don't know if you know this, but even at places like Walmart or McDonald's, you need to apply online, and you not only need to apply online, you have to have an email address. Libraries are that place where if you do not have the technology, if you do not have the wherewithal to connect to the internet, you can go and find it free. Finally, the traditional mission of the public library to provide its users books and other resources for continuing education, self-improvement, and recreation both changes and stay the same. In the 80s, having different resources meant having the paperback and the hardback copy. Then came audiobooks and videos. Now books and movies are streamed. Still, it's the public library that you can go. And it's the public library that makes sure that you have access freely to these and protects your censorship and your privacy. Resources are rarely free to libraries. Libraries are tremendously cooperative. In Maine last year, more than 1 million items were loaned from one library to another. They are always looking for ways to share collections, but finding funding for libraries is becoming harder and harder as city and town funds become scarce and libraries are viewed as unnecessary or as frivolous. It is my hope that funders contemplate that patron I always keep in mind, that fifth grader who comes to the library to learn everything he can about space travel or ancient Egyptians or even cartooning, or that fifth grader that's inside each of us that wants to know more, that is curious. What he finds in the library changes his life and that of our world. It only takes one idea, and that seed for that idea can be found at the library. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara, for reminding us. I said that I feel this university, as I walk across the campus, is a sacred place because of ideas, and I think libraries in our society hold that same sacredness about opening us to the world, and we appreciate that very much. And now I would like to invite Jerry Talbot, on behalf of the Board of Trustees of the University of New England, to present his Deborah Morton Award recipient. This is really a nice thing because Jerry is on our board and Rachel Talbot Ross is his daughter.
Good afternoon to everybody and to the President. On behalf of the Board of Trustees of the University of New England, it is my pleasure to present the 2010 Deborah Morton Award recipient, Rachel Talbot Ross, of whom I especially am proud because she is my daughter. You go ahead.
It's a very touching moment. Rachel Talbot Ross is the Director of Equity and Multicultural Community Development for the City of Portland. She is Chair of the Maine Advisory Committee of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights and has throughout her lifetime been a civil rights leader in Maine, following in her dad's footsteps. As president of the NAACP Portland branch and the state director for this organization, Ross helps to coordinate the efforts of the greater Bangor area and Maine state prison branches. Her work also encompasses the preservation and teaching of Maine's African American history. She is co-chair of the African American Collection of Maine and the founding president of Maine Freedom Trails, where she directed the creation of both the Portland Freedom Trail and the Malaga Island Freedom Trail. Ross serves on several boards, including the Seven Eagles Media Production and the Jean Byers Sampson Center for Diversity in Maine, and we're honored today to present her as a Deborah Morton awardee.
Good morning. I'm a hugger, so good morning to President Rippich, the Board of Trustees, the UNE faculty, staff, and students, the Deborah Morton Society Selection Committee, the Deborah Morton Society Chair, members, distinguished guests, to my family who's here today. It is with great humility that I say thank you for this recognition. I am sincerely grateful. To my fellow awardees, it is truly an honor to experience today's convocation and induction into the society with you. You have my deepest respect. To our Deborah Morton Endowed Scholarship recipients, Brittany Pye and Kimberly Williamson, congratulations. Special thanks to my dear friend, my colleague, a mentor, a sister, Donna Loring. A 2011 Deborah Morton Society awardee, and who without I would not be here today. She's this year's best Deborah Morton Society ambassador, by the way, too. So. For those of you who may not know of Donna's work and legacy, you should check out the annual Donna M. Loring Lecture Series, which is sponsored by the Maine Women Writers Collection here. It addresses current and historic Native American or Aboriginal issues, indigenous rights, as well as women's rights, civil rights, and the issues of fairness and equality. Donna's energy for learning never stops, and her contributions to our collective learning and engagement is inspiring. She brings forth the voice of the Wabanaki people here in the state of Maine. Thank you, Donna. It is fair to say, in a much different way, that I also wouldn't be here, literally, without the love and care and support, the guidance and patience of my family. My mother, who was the rock of our family. And as a mother, I know how hard she works to keep us all together. My father, who's a consummate and compassionate fighter for freedom for all ages, and by the way, he was the first feminist I ever got to know, lives his life through the creed, I am my brother and my sister's keeper. My sisters, who like me, received the best education possible at the dining room table every night for supper. There was nonstop discussion. My parents taught us about the real history, real geography, social studies, humanities, art, politics, and of course, the importance of service, the importance to give back, and our obligation to continue the fight for justice and equality somewhere in our lives. As a ninth-generation Mainer of African descent, I know that I did not arrive here all on my own accord, deserving to be singled out for any accomplishment, as there is no doubt that if I am standing tall, it is because I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors. So I also give thanks to them for creating a pathway for me to walk easily into opportunity. After learning more about the courageous life of Deborah Morton, I now know that I must add her to those I thank for forging a path. As a teacher, historian, linguist, and progressive civic leader, the choices she made in her life and the leadership was shaped by the Civil War and the passage of Reconstruction-era amendments. They're also known as the first Civil Rights Movement, the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, and the 19th Amendment. Just think of that for a moment, really, to be actively engaged, to be on the cutting edge of learning, to push for the realization of our democratic principles. Deborah Morton lived her life during this time. The abolition of slavery, granting citizenship rights to all persons born in the United States, regardless of their race, color, or creed, and the right to vote. And here I thought my life was exciting because I got to vote for the first black president. But this is the world she helped create for me, for us, for you, the true promise of freedom, justice, and equality. She was courageous indeed. If you fast forward to 1961, when the then Westbrook College courageously established the first award named for a woman in the state of Maine, Deborah Morton. This is a full 3 years before the March on Washington. This is a full 3 years before the landmark piece of civil rights legislation in the United States, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, that outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, and the unequal application of voter registration requirements and racial segregation in schools, the workplace, and public accommodations. UNE established this award 3 years prior to that landmark civil rights bill. This was known as our second civil rights movement. So I thank you today, Deborah Morton, and the University of New England for paving the way for me to stand here and be recognized alongside these accomplished and successful women, for you to see me and whatever work I may have contributed to this legacy. I want to end by asking a question about what would Deborah Morton want us to do now? What would she want us to do now? I think she would say, ladies, move us forward. Do not study me or memorialize me in your history books. Do not admire me from afar. Embrace my legacy and hold each other accountable for not letting go of all of the gains of the past. Make sure they're not repealed or lessened in any way. Do not get comfortable with your sense of equality, but keep working, keep fighting. It is not enough for us to be equal under the law if the application of that law is inequitable in our lives. What is equality without equity? She may tell us to fight for the elimination of structural racism and classism and sexism and homophobia. She may ask us, pick up that mantle and move us forward. Eliminate the decades of disparities in health, healthcare, education, economic prosperity, and in our social and political systems. Do not accept mass incarceration, families living without food or shelter, human beings considered illegal, war and the raging violence in our neighborhoods, the right to not love someone because they may be of the same gender as you. Work, keep working, fighting, move us forward. Do not see today as some end of your journey. She would say, see it as the continuation of ours. Today is not just a celebration, it is a call for action. And I would say, Deborah, I hear you. I'm ready. Let's move forward. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, so much, and to your mom and dad, Anita and Jerry, for all the blessings that you have brought to the University of New England and being a part of the UNE family. We're so honored to have you. And all of you today are Deborah Morton Award recipients, and I hope our students have been listening to this message. The message of these awardees, I believe, is to take risks, to keep stretching yourself, make sure that you don't rest on your laurels, to hold to your character, to be passionate about your work, and to care deeply about it, to care about ideas and books, and make sure that you hold to learning your whole life. And finally, Rachel's message of move us forward with social justice. As you are the successors in this world, you are the future Deborah Morton awardees for this institution. And I am so honored to be with you today and with all of you. And now I'd like to turn this back to our chair, Lori LaChance. Thank you.
I can really only say one word. Wow. That was absolutely amazing. Thank you for the gifts that you've given us today. We so appreciate it. You are truly an inspiration to all of us. Again, I want to thank everybody for being here at the University of New England. And that's another thing I would add to the list of advice to our students. Humility is a wonderful thing. Thank you for joining us, and for those who are joining us at the luncheon, we'll move to room 24, the College of Pharmacy, and there are folks from UNE who will guide us. Thank you all for coming today.